This is quite funny. I feel like I'm on the market selling clothes now. But no, today's video is about what to wear for the newborn sessions, and we're going to discuss what is good and what you need to be aware of. Kind of like these are all my personal opinions. This is what I normally would recommend to families, and I hope this will be helpful for you too. Let's start with some general advice here. I've been a photographer for 12 years. I'm predominantly portrait photographer. I've done newborn photography now for almost 10 years. And I there is always a pattern of what families bring for their newborn session. And I do send out a little kind of like email explaining what to avoid and what to look out and which clothes are good. But I thought, to make a video will be probably a lot more helpful when you can see the visuals of what I mean by various clothes types. So we're going to start with the general stuff. So stripes and patterns. So this is kind of like stripes, and like this is generally for parents, not so much for children, but for parents. Thick stripes across the body, no good. Because you're basically cutting up your photo into lines, and if for example, this is my wife's, and if I would be wearing a solid color shirt or something next to her, she would always stand out, and you would be actually looking into photos on these stripes or these kind of like patterns on a body. It would just look quite busy. So that's the first thing. Second thing, you need to remember that clothes is something what we're gonna get outdated with time, and you probably seen some funny family pictures where family is sitting in front of the curtain, and a curtain is exactly in the same flowery pattern as her clothes, basic mom's clothes. So I definitely recommend you to think about that as well. So I always say to parents, try to wear something as plain as possible, something what is not gonna date with the patterns or maybe logos or I don't know, whatever, these kind of things. But that's something else what you need to think about when you pick your clothes. And I always say, try to wear as plain as possible. I don't want to say boring, but that's something what is gonna last through generations, and it's just gonna look simple and nice. Now we're gonna move into kind of like a newborn things. First thing, this is my wife's, and I picked this one out specifically because of the frontal texture. It has like a little like a stone things on it. I definitely don't recommend to wear something like that, because your baby is gonna be up here against your body, and if there is like a sometimes there are like a beads or things like that on the top of your top, that will be no good because your baby's body will be against it. And I always say, look, let's try to avoid it. If that would be the only stuff what you brought with you, then I probably would wrap the baby or dress baby in one of my kind of like newborn outfits, so there would be some sort of like a protection for baby's skin. But I generally say don't wear anything with some kind of like a beady stuff on the front for a newborn session. Now, in terms of women, generally the main complaint pretty much always, apart of kind of like, oh, my face looks a bit tired, the second kind of like complaint always would be if I have photographed women with kind of like in a tube dress or a kind of like a strapless dress, they always complain about their arms. And this is kind of like it's been going on, it's never ending basically thing. So I always say, okay, if you're not concerned about your arms, fine, you can wear the the tube, or even thing like this with no kind of like beady stuff where it's just a little bit, so if you're gonna cuddle your baby, it's gonna look like almost skin to skin, so it would look like you're not wearing basically a top. So you could have like a tube around or something like that, and it looks really pretty as long as you're comfortable with your arm parts. If you're not, then I always recommend to find something plain with long sleeves, you know, like a top like this. Is just a very simple round neck. It can be round, and a v-neck. V-neck, for example, for women, it slims down a little bit face, you know. That's just kind of like a general rule in a portraiture. But yes, long sleeves or 3/4, you know, something like that we're gonna do really nice. You know, I have picked like, you know, like very plain top. So this one has a little bit shoulder. It's kind of like borderline for me, you know. If you don't have anything else, you know, this kind of like the length of, you know, the sleeve will be fine, as long as it just kind of like covers that shoulder a little bit is okay as well. She has like a, you know, I don't know, whatever's the jumper kind of thing, or again, round neck, you know, long sleeves. Or you can have like a cardigan, for example, which just kind of like closes, you know, and it creates that kind of like a V-neck shape. And that also goes for not only like just pair, you know, mom alone, for example, portraits, but that goes also for like a family picture with baby, you know, things like that. So this all, you know, potentially could work. In terms of color, generally the color for parents, for family photos, men, women, you know, I kind of brought the red one with me. So for example, if you have a photo of husband wearing that, like a nice kind of like plain gray, and mom is wearing that, and the kids are also in a plain, then guess who is going to stand out in a photo the most? Obviously the red, you know, sometimes it's red, sometimes it's yellow, sometimes it's orange. If you are big fans of bold colors, fine by me, as long as all of you have a touch of a bold color. So nobody is really competing for attention in a photo, you know, kind of like orange there, red there, and this and that. And, you know, kind of try to keep it this cohesive, basically, you know, that it just kind of like all works together. Don't try to pick just one person, you know, wears really strong, bold, basically color. So something also for you to think about. In terms of the family pictures for a newborn shoots, generally they are in black and white. So for example, like this has been probably for past years where families do kind of prefer to have a black and white portrait of their family. So in theory, in that case, it would probably no matter that you're wearing red, because obviously image will be converted in black and white, and tonality, you know, should be kind of like okay, as long as, you know, one is not wearing white and one is not wearing black, where is a total contrast and clash between. Even if I convert this in black and white, one person is going to look really pale and one is going to be really dark. So think about it as well. Don't try to mix these two together in one photo. You know, gray and black, fine. Gray and white, fine. They kind of like in black and white conversion works pretty okay. Now, men. Well, with the men is, you know, I guess is much more straightforward. You know, same thing with the patterns. These two would be almost like a borderline to me in terms of pattern. This one has kind of like a bit of small pattern, so generally I would be a bit like not sure, but okay, we could go with that. This one has really fine pattern, fine. But if you have, you know, those office shirts with kind of like lines coming through the body, I probably would say no to that. Try to maybe pick a solid color for that. If you want your newborn portrait to look quite formal, maybe you're in a tie or a jacket or something like that, fine by me, but try to pick, you know, appropriate shirt, or try to not to bring the tie also which is stripy. You know, I brought some kind of like, you know, this is my plain gray, you know, whatever I'm wearing now, it's very plain, fine for shirts and t-shirts, you know. I brought one other one, so basically again, plain solid colors, great, you know, very straightforward, easy, you know. Sometimes if you have tattoos on your hands, you know, think about that as well if you want to show them very well. So sometimes you could wear one of those kind of like t-shirts, kind of which accentuates your body quite a bit, and you see the bare shoulder. So again, the same idea. If you would hold the baby, you know, it would look like, you know, it's almost skin to skin kind of like thing, you know. Obviously you don't need to wear the top all together if you don't want to, if you really want to show those kind of like tattooed parts, so that so that would be fine. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention in a parent's part is when we photograph newborn photos, we don't photograph bottoms. So I don't care what you're wearing on a bottom. It can be for girls leggings, for boys jeans, you know, doesn't matter, you know. I'm interested in upper part only. So, you know, there is there is no reason to photograph feet unless unless I would be doing like a home session with you, natural photo shoot. Then sometimes when you would be sitting on a bed or something, I would say, okay, you know, for that you might be considering maybe girls putting like a jeans on, or you know, or a longer dress or something like that, and and for guys with jeans would be normal. But generally for a studio work, I would photograph only upper parts. So that's pretty much, you know, in terms of kind of like appearance side. I'm gonna show you a little bit more on a siblings and kids side. Like it's probably gonna be harder for you to pick clothes for that one. Okay, kids clothes. So this is probably the most kind of like struggle parents would have to find a plain kids clothes. They always have big logos for boys. Girls would have like hearts, pink, whatever, horses and stuff on. You know, I have 3 children myself. I know how hard it is to buy something plain and solid, basically, for in solid colors for kids. I always say, look, you know, in theory, you know, if you're doing only, let's say, a sister and a baby photo, you know, she could wear something, you know, tutu and whatever beady stuff, you know, might be okay. But generally I say, look, again, think about, you know, if this is gonna get outdated, and that like a pony t-shirt what she's wearing, you know, today, in 10 years might be like, what is that and why did I wear that, basically, kind of thing. So we're gonna just kind of, I'm gonna do a little bit of more recommendations for a kids clothes. I actually don't have a perfect set of clothes here for children, because I just opened my kids wardrobe and I was like, we don't have any plain stuff. I have some which we specifically bought for some of the kind of like a family pictures, but I just couldn't find it. Now let's start with boys. Faces on tops, and this probably for girls as well. You do not want another face, another pair of eyes looking into the camera, because this takes attention away, you know, from your child. If there would be, you know, some sort of like a small logo, fine, that's okay. But this is quite, you know, as cute as it is, and that's probably what little monkey is my, you know, kid. But I would say maybe not for a kid's photo. Now, another one, bright colors, kind of like big writings and things like that. I mean, this would be kind of like a borderline for me as well. I'm kind of, first, it's a bright color. I would be like, okay, if the other, you know, if you have a one sibling and a newborn, maybe fine. But if you have a second one, you know, you would need to kind of like match, you know, in the same strong, bold color, same as we talked earlier about the parents. So yeah, so kind of like try to avoid maybe big writings and things like that. So for boys, you know, you can buy kind of like, you know, a plain, you know, smart shirts with a short sleeves, things like that. Actually, in terms of the color, and this goes also for parents as well, what I forgot to mention, sometimes parents, when they come for family pictures with me, they would get the clothes and then just bring them back to the shop. It's, you know, it's very cheeky, but it has happened before, you know, when parents really want something like nice, but they know that their child is not gonna wear that, like there's not gonna be occasion when they would wear that again, you know, then sometimes they would just simply bring the clothes back to the shop. We would not take tags off, we're just gonna hide them in the back, but it has happened in, you know, before that. To me, it doesn't matter. It looks nice, you know, it looks beautiful in the photos. As long as it works, you know, fine by me. Now, let's move to girls. This is probably where it gets really kind of like bright. You know, again, those bright lines across the body. I would say, you know, for kids, I'm not concerned about arms, you know, that's obviously fine. but it's just those kind of like bright, bold colors again, stripes across, and I would be like, not perfect. Now I have another dress of Annabelle. This one has a little kind of horsey, which is fine, but this dress, for example, has thinner lines, and they actually don't stand as much out against, you know, this kind of like off-white stuff. So I would say, you know, it's not too bad, you know, it's okay. I think we can live with this, you know. Ideally, of course, I would like this to be kind of like a plain top with just maybe kind of like a little logo going on. I'm not also concerned that, you know, the bottom is kind of like, you know, more like a pattern, because she would be probably sitting and holding a baby or lying down on her back. So, so generally, you know, is fine. Now there's another dress for Annabelle's here. This one has a huge heart in the front. Generally, I would say it's okay by me, you know, I'm not too concerned. This does have a, how you call that, sequin, whatever, like a little round shiny things basically, but they are flat. It is a little bit edgy, but they're all kind of like sewed together, so they are not moving, they're not making that kind of like pattern. If you have those, then the moving ones, I normally say don't wear that, because again, a baby is going to be against her body. She might be holding or lying down in the back and cuddling baby in. A baby might just scratch the hands or a face against those beads. But if it's a sit down shot, they should be pretty okay. I don't mind also a tutu stuff. That actually looks pretty, you know, nice for little girls. Now, in terms of the newborn stuff, let's talk about, you know, if we do bring any stuff for the newborns themselves. So, newborn clothing. This one is quite subjective, you know. In some religions, you know, or some families would be like, you know, we don't want any naked photos of babies. So that would mean I would either wrap the baby, or whenever, if I do any frontal positions, I would put a wraps on a kind of like a bottom part, so nothing is exposed. Or I have like a little outfits for newborns here, so kind of like these cute things. So basically we put a baby in that, you know. I have kind of like more open ones where they kind of like I would see feet and arms out, you know. This one has kind of like a long sleeves but a closed in. You know, these look really nice on a newborns, and I use them quite often, kind of like for awake stuff. Another thing what I would probably do for the newborns is, if it's kind of like, you know, we don't mind, but you know, kind of we would like some parts to be, private parts obviously covered, I could do a wrap on a baby. So I would just literally would either fully wrap the baby, or I would wrap the baby around from edges, kind of like to keep it nice and you know, composed baby. So these images look really nice as well, and you see the hands on their chest and the feet up, and it looks pretty nice. You know, it's very popular in the studio these days, you know, to do these kind of like these kind of like portraits as well. So I'm quite happy kind of like do those. Some parents don't want babies maybe to be fully wrapped, but you know, it depends how is your newborn, you know, how is baby doing. If baby is kind of like more alert, you know, sometimes I wrap them just to calm them down and get to that, you know, maybe sleepy stage. It really, you know, it depends what families, you know, request. You know, if you would be coming to me, that's kind of like what I would recommend. If you go to some other studio, and you know, you might need to ask the photographer and say, look, you know, what do we bring for a baby? What do you have in a studio? You know, if we don't want kind of like a bare skin pictures, you know, if there are any options. If you bring your own clothes for a newborn session, I kind of don't suggest to do that, because when you bring your newborn, you know, let's say your 2-week newborn to the studio, most likely all of the clothes are too big. They look too baggy, and what happens when you hold the baby, for example, everything wrinkles up and it comes around the face, and it just does not look pretty. You know, your baby kind of sinks in those clothes and disappears. Sometimes, you know, somebody gifted something very special and the parents are like, oh, I really would like photo in that outfit, you know. I always say you're welcome to bring it as long as it fits baby very well. Sometimes we try to put the little clips on the side, so stretch the clothes so it just kind of looks nicer and doesn't look like oversized, and you don't see hands disappear in sleeves and, you know, and these kind of things. So kind of like, you know, think about it. Probably plain vest would be nice. Longer sleeve outfits, I would say probably, you know, those you photograph around 6 weeks, you know, 8 weeks, when the baby is a little bit more like chubbier, and you can, you know, like the clothes start to become a little bit more snug, you know, that looks much nicer at that point. So that's kind of, you know, for that. I also have, like, you know, so you see here like a hats and, you know, things like that. Obviously these would be kind of like more in the props, could be part of the clothing as well. There's like a, if you, for girls, you know, keeping, you know, kind of like top part, you know, exposed, but maybe just covering the bottom part, you know, little tutus, things like that look cute as well, and you see the feet popping through, so that's kind of nice. So that's, you know, that's kind of like in a general for, you know, what you would wear and bring for your kind of like a newborn session. If there's going to be anything else I'll think of, you know, I'm just going to keep adding to this video, but at the moment that's probably you know, would be what I would recommend. So I hope this was helpful. If you are, you know, kind of like Lothian, Edinburgh based, you know, family and looking for a newborn photographer, by means, you know, get in touch, you know, and we can discuss all sorts of, like, you know, details of what I offer. And you can find a lot more videos in my Facebook, you know, on my website, YouTube channel and things like that. So, but for now, it was nice to see you here.